All right, my name is Brian Taylor. I'm a recovery coach for Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Services, and we work out of CRC in Batavia. I have 6 years sober, clean off of opiates mostly, though I have dabbled in a lot of other drugs in my life. If there was anybody that was like the perfect statistic for somebody who was going to like have substance abuse issues when they grow older, it was me because I met all the criteria of like broken home, dad was an alcoholic addict, so should have seen it coming down the road a long time before it actually came down the road. But grew up, first 8 or 9 years of my life, my parents were married and everything. My dad, like I said, was an alcoholic and did a lot of drugs and stuff. And when I was about 10 or so, after about 3 or 4 years of him like being there half the time, showing up whenever, we pretty much found out that he was living a double life. Like he had another family, in another town that he would like stay with or whatever. So my parents got divorced. My mom was a really hard worker, very focused on, taking care of her family and not depending on anybody. And she, we went to church a lot when I was after that, and it looked like through my like high school years and stuff like that, that if you would look at that and how I was then, you wouldn't figure out that you wouldn't think that my life would turn out, because I was always a good student, very like involved with a lot of things, sports, music, all kinds of things like that. And I was really focused in school, especially high school. I was going to graduate and I was going to go to school because I graduated in the top 10% of my class and stuff like that. So I was going to school, going to go to college. I was going to be a lawyer. That's what I wanted to do. And the first night that I was at college. I went to a party and blacked out. Drank so much and whatever and blacked out. And it was just pretty much downhill from there. I just didn't care. I got put on academic probation like twice and stuff like that, which, was really not me, because I really did care about things like that. But I don't know, it was just something kind of clicked. And I like to joke and say I didn't flunk out of school, I drunk out of school, but I came back. I live in a small. I come from a small town in Adams County, so I come back and I get a little job or whatever, and then I'm just hanging out with friends I always did, and we partied a lot, we drank a lot, smoked a lot of weed, did whatever drug passed through the town there, but it was nothing that like I felt like I needed to like function. It was just more we did stuff like that because there was really nothing, anything else to do, to entertain ourselves. And I did that probably for about 15 years. I had a pretty good job. I got in with a company where I learned how to cut meat, and it was a good trade to do, and I did that for many years. And it was probably around the year 2002, something like that, that I was working in a job and somebody introduced me to Percocets. And I had I had taken like pain medication before in my life, but it was just like didn't really make me feel one way or the other. But something just clicked in pushed my button that day, and next thing you know, I'm like going back like 2 days later and saying, hey, can you hook me up again? And like that. And then finding out when they would get their prescription. And then I thought, well, maybe I can go to my doctor and kind of like lie about something that was wrong, with me. And So I concocted this whole story about how I fell back in this lawn chair on a deck and hurt my neck, right? And I go to the doctor, and he's like really concerned. He goes, well, first thing, the most important thing to me was he wrote me a prescription. I was like, yeah, score, and he said, well, I want to send you for MRI, and I was like, well, that lasted all but one doctor visit, because they're going to do that and they're going to find something. They're not going to find anything. Well, turns out I really did have something wrong with my neck. I have stenosis in my neck, like my spinal cord was narrowing in my neck. So, his big thing was, when you need to send you to a spine doctor, pain management kind of deal. And I did that, and I tried like crazy to manipulate that doctor, but he was just like not having any of it. He knew what I was doing. So I decided I was going to go to, and this is about the time that like all the pill mill doctor places were popping up, like in Portsmouth and places like that. So I went up there, and it was just so easy to like get right into that stuff and get what I wanted. And next thing you know, I'm doing that, and I'm meeting people inside the circle that you meet, like whatever your drug choice is. There's always like a little inner circle of people, and you get to know other people when you're out looking. And I met some people who were making out-of-state trips to go to other doctors, and I got involved with that, so I was like double doctoring and all sorts of no good stuff. And I was building a tolerance that was just stupid levels. That's the best way I can put it, is stupid. And that was probably about 9 years ago. And then they started, the whole pill epidemic was really coming to a head, and it was getting too hard to get prescriptions filled and stuff like that. So I was kind of seeing the writing on the wall, that like this is going to come to a screeching halt, and here I'm going to be like sick, horribly withdrawing and stuff. And so I decided I was going to self-medicate with like Suboxone, because I had heard about it. And the first time I took Suboxone, it was very new, because nobody really knew what the right amount to take was on the street, And the first time I took it, I about overdosed on it, because I took the whole thing instead of like how you're supposed to take it. And it was about that time. The whole time through my opiate, the whole thing with the pills and stuff, I was in a relationship with a woman, and that really, it come to a head because of some things that I forgot to erase off my phone, and she found my phone and stuff like that, and basically said, hey, you got to go get help. I don't want, it kind of come off as like, I don't want anything to do with you till you go do this. But I was like, all right. So I went and I got some help, and I decided I was going to go the meeting routes and stuff like that. So I did that for probably about 6 months, but I know now, looking back, that I was never really buying into the whole thing. And it was just kind of like white knuckling it to keep it out of the ditch the whole time, keep the car on the road, And 6 months after that, I had went to get a tooth pulled. And I'd been to the doctor a couple of times, and, even my old family doctor was like, I know you're going through things with your neck. And I ended up with a shoulder problem too. And he was like suggesting another way we could deal with the pain and whatever. And I'd always been like, no, you know what, I'm dealing with it and whatever. But I got that tooth pulled, and the dentist was like, hey, do you want something for pain? I said, yeah. And by the time the next day rolled around, about the same time, the whole script was gone. And I was just back in it again. And it was even worse because I was smoking a lot of meth and I was drinking and I did that and I was so good at like being a functioning person doing that, and I kept it hid from, and I got back with my ex, and I was so good at keeping that hid, and then it just come to a head again because she found something on my cell phone again. And that pretty much ended that. That was in the year 2011. And really, from the beginning of the year 2011, things just, I had thought that like I had been at my bottom a couple of times, but I really had no clue what a bottom was until 2011 because in January I lost my job, a really good job. A couple months later, I lost my relationship, which wasn't quite so bad. But, and then I basically lost my house where I was living at, had to move back in with my mom, you know, and instead of like seeing all these things that were like taken or I helped get rid of in my life, I didn't see it that way, and I just forged on like I'm going to drink and smoke weed and smoke meth and do pills still, and I did that through that summer, and on October 23rd of 2011, I woke up and I said, hey, I'm going to go look for a job. I'm going to go put in applications, these places. And that was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I went to the gas station and I bought a case of beer. And I'd never, ever done that in my life. Even, you know, even the worst of things or like whatever, I'd never, ever done that. So I ended up driving around and doing a bunch of drugs and drinking, and I blacked out. And I don't really know for sure how long I blacked out while I was driving around. But I ended up in a cornfield with somebody knocking on my window, and they're like, hey, you know, we need to take you someplace because somebody's going to call this in. You're going to get a DUI. So they took me to a friend of mine's house, and I said, hey, can I hang here tonight? And they're like, yeah. And I woke up the next morning, and I just felt so horrible, and I'm just like, I was like, I cannot do this to myself anymore because, and essentially I was praying too. I was like, you know, God, because I'd always prayed to like, God, help me find some money today. Help me find somebody that has something. But that day I prayed, you know, I can't do this anymore. You know, don't want to get emotional here, but I need, you know, this isn't me. And he put, I thought of this friend of mine who was a pastor where I live at and was in the process of trying to start a inpatient treatment place in our county. And I went and seen him, and I was just like, you know, I can't do this. I don't have any money. You know, I don't have any insurance. And he's like, he told me about a place in Los Angeles called the Dream Center. It was a year-long program. And I was like, you know, I got to do something because my town was so small. I could have like a few weeks or a week or two of sobriety, but I would go to Walmart or I'd go to the gas station and I'd run into somebody, and then it'd be like all over again. And basically after that, on November 11th of 2011, I landed in Los Angeles and went into the program, and it was such a huge culture shock for me because the place was located halfway between downtown Los Angeles and Hollywood, straight in the city. You know, I'm a guy from the sticks and like always was like that, and I went through that program. I'd only planned on staying a year, but I ended up staying almost 4 years because I ended up working for the program, and then I got a job outside to save up money to come back. But it was a whole process of pulling a lot of things out of me that I didn't realize that I had in me. Like, I never thought I was ever an angry person, but that program showed that I had issues with that. And a lot of it was like dealing with a lot of bitterness and regret and resentment and stuff like that that I really didn't understand that I had in me. And through the whole time, you know, my family, because I wanted to stay out there to save some money, because I didn't want to come back here and be dependent on them when they got back completely, because they were, you know, from the get-go, when I decided I was going to go do treatment, they were the people that were like behind me 120%, you know, and I just felt like I kind of owed it to them to not to be the mooch anymore, you know, and the whole process with that too is I treated them horribly, and most people that get in that position do treat your family horrible, and they ended up being my biggest supporters through it all. Even more of a blessing that has come out of like me being in recovery is, like I said earlier, my mom had always taken us to church, and we went through a lot of churches, mostly because my mom didn't feel like the church was like reaching out to like people who needed the most. You know, people where I'm from, they go to church, they're more concerned about paying an electric bill through the winter than like, you know, maybe buying kids school supplies or something that need it. And there was a lot of churches out there like that. And we went through a lot of churches, and the church that I go to now, who was very supportive of me, my mom and my sister started going to that church, and you know, it's been a huge change, especially for my sister, because she, not to really back up, but the whole plan of the original pastor that was my friend to help me get out there, he gave the idea of our treatment center to somebody else who became my new pastor. And my sister, who discovered her passion while I was out in California, to become the fundraiser for the new treatment facility. And you know, in 5+ years, she's raised almost 90 grand, which out where I live at is like a huge amount of money. So she's found her passion, and my mom has got renewed in like her faith and stuff like that. And all that came about because I made bad choices, you know, but then made a good choice. So when I came back, you know, I got in with my church. I got a job working for the lab at CRC, and I met a couple other ladies on our team, you know, on a break, and you know, we was just sharing our story and stuff. And they're like, "We think you would be great to work with." And I was like, "Nah, you know, I like my job that I have now and this and that." And then I met another lady that I work with, and she's like, said the same thing. She's like, "You really need to put your resume in." And I found in my newfound recovery or whatever recovery that things are best when I step out and I'm going for change, moving towards things that I'm not going to feel comfortable with at first, but I know it's going to bring growth in me. And I felt like, you know, I'm a praying person. I pray about things. And, you know, I prayed about that, and I felt like God was telling me, you need to change. You need to grow some. You need to do what the purpose I've put in you. which I felt like I discovered that way early in my program that I was in, that I was going to be not in this capacity like I am today, but doing what we do on a regular basis. I felt like that I was called to do that. At first, it wasn't easy, at all. I felt like I kind of made a mistake because I was like, ugh, but that was just all part of the growing process, figuring things out. And now I realize that this is probably the best job I've ever had or will ever have. You get to share your experience. You get to offer people hope. They can see hope in you. I always like to look at it as like casting the light in the dark places, because I was in that dark place too, and somebody did it for me, and I feel like and it's nothing like, there's no ego involved with it. And there's no like, well, I want to get more people into treatment than other people on my team. It's nothing to do with that. And that's also a huge change in me, because I'm a very competitive person, and because I'm like one of these people that I hate to lose more than I like to win. And, there's nothing like that. It's like everybody is a family. That's one of the many great things I love about my job, because none of these people feel like they're my coworker. They feel like they're friends, and I get up every day and I like going to work. There was a time in my life where I didn't even want to get up, and I just was kind of over it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.